Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jean Hardy-Matthews, and I'm the Customer Success Manager at Workbooks. I've got, as usual, on the session, my colleague Ruth from our marketing team. Ruth will be keeping an eye on any questions that come in, although I will allow time towards the end of the session for any particular questions that you want to ask me while we're online. Before I get going with what I'm going to show you today, just to let you know, one aspect of my role in terms of managing our account team is to work with them to make sure that you're being kept up to date with the product improvements and enhancements that we release from time to time. And it's our role really to show you the changes that you could use to enhance your usage of the workbook system. So, bearing in mind that within the next month or so, we do expect a new version of the software to be released. And please don't ask me exact dates for that later when you're able to ask questions, because I don't know yet, but we are expecting it to be in the next couple of months. So in advance of that, we thought it would be useful to recap on some of the enhancements that we've introduced over the last year or so before we then introduce even more functionality, and just to give you a chance to catch up really with where we're at. So, if you've joined any of the previous release webinars that we've delivered over the last year, or maybe you attended our customer event last October, you'll be aware that the primary focus for the last few releases has been to make the tool easier to use than it already was. Hopefully it was fairly intuitive, but it's improving all the time. And to provide functionality to support best practice, and also just to make it reduce the number of clicks required to get things done, to get your jobs done. So in this webinar, I'm going to recap on the following topics. I'm going to talk about some of the improvements that we've made to the way in which you can see information on dashboards to make them more intuitive to use, really, including one piece of functionality that we've called Card View. I'm also going to look at the overview panel. This is something you won't see it unless you've actually activated it, but you can activate it on opportunity records and case records. And it's really to help your teams drive best practice. Hopefully you'll see what I mean when we go into the tool. Similar to the overview panel, but slightly different, is the concept of a side panel on a form. You can activate it on any form layout, and it helps to show users the information that they want to see all at one time without having to click around in the product. I'll also show you the new date picker that we have. It makes it a bit easier to select a date which is a fixed amount of time away from the day that you select the date. So 6 months in the future, 1 day in the past, that kind of thing. I'll also show you a couple of fields that we've added to activity records, the outcome and next steps fields that make setting up your follow-up activities much quicker. You may have heard us bandying around some terminology about Springboards. Springboards are designed to make it much easier for you and your colleagues to access the data that you want, and they can be set up in such a way as to help users drive their day when they first log into the system, rather than wondering, well, what should I focus on? And the other enhancement, small one, but very useful nonetheless, is the Windows Manager, which makes it easier to view your open and minimized records on the desktop and to manage what it is that you're working on. Now, I won't necessarily show you all of these features in this exact order, but I will highlight them as I move through the product. Also, please be aware that during this session, I don't plan to show you too much about the how to set these things up. This is more about the possibilities to show you what you could set up. Everything, though, that I'm showing you is available right now. It might just be a case that a system administrator needs to take some action to make that functionality available to you and make it visible to you. So I'm going to move into Workbooks. Bear with me while I bring up a demo system. Hopefully you're all now seeing a Workbooks desktop. I'm logged in. Those of you who've been on my webinars before, you'll be familiar with this kind of approach. I'm logged into a demo database as a sales manager called Anthony Khan. That's my name for the next hour or so. And as a sales manager or salesperson, I need to keep opportunities up to date. So it might be quite common for somebody who works in a sales arena to come in and click on Start and navigate to, in my world, opportunities. So here we are. Those of you who've been on any of our training courses will know that we call these a landing page. So here's my open opportunities. And I happen to have this view of them sorted by the close date of the opportunity, with the oldest one showing first. So as a salesperson, I might open one of these up. If I open this one up, oh, with all good demos, that's not the one I wanted to open. I've doctored one to look in a particular way for you, just to show you. So I'll open this one, maximize that slightly. So I'm sure that your opportunity records, the forms that you use, will look slightly different from this one, but I'm hoping that there are some commonalities. Things like you'll have a name for your opportunity, you'll have a prospective customer and a close date. And if I scroll down, you will have one or more line item to track what it is you're proposing to sell to whoever the customer at the top is. Now, hopefully for fairly obvious reasons, it's good practice to make sure that if you've got an open opportunity, you've also got a next step. What do you need to do to follow up this opportunity and make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks, make sure someone speaks to this prospect and pushes the sale forwards? So from here, I could go to my activities tab, the third or fourth one in there, and I can see that, yep, I've got a couple of activities there. One is complete on the 9th of February and one's due tomorrow, actually. So that's fine. I might also want to know, have we emailed about this particular deal, in which case I'd go and open the emails tab. For me right now, there isn't anything there, but that's fine. I'd probably be interested as a salesperson in who are the people who are deciding about this sale. So I could go to the people tab and I can add other people here and I can see who's involved in this deal. All of that's fine, but I've already been clicking around quite a lot just to get some overview really of what's going on with the opportunity. The other thing I could do, instead of clicking on all those individual tabs, is I could go to the summary tab to get an overview. We've had the summary tab itself for quite some time, but now it's displayed as a timeline, a sort of chronological timeline, rather than a grid. If I just go to the view button and click view as grid, some of you might remember it used to look more like that. But by default, now, you don't have to change this, this is how it will look, and it will show you the most recently amended record that is linked to this particular opportunity. You'll notice that on the left-hand side here as well, in some of the instances, there are photographs. We have introduced the ability, I didn't mention it in the introduction, but we have introduced the ability to upload your user photos. Either an individual user can do that within their preferences, or you can go to the user record and upload a photo there if you want to. You don't have to, but you've got that ability to do that. What we've had feedback on from quite a lot of users over the last couple of years where people have been working remotely is that it's actually quite nice to see photographs of their colleagues because maybe they don't get to mix with them very much, but that's personal choice. So I suspect that quite a few of you on this call right now are using opportunities that look pretty much like the one on the screen, and that you're clicking through different tabs to be able to find out the salient pieces of information that will help you progress this deal. That's fine. But hopefully by the end of this session, if you aren't already using it, you'll have seen an alternative way to do this, which might make life a little bit easier. Let me close this down. I'm just going to reload my screen. And when that pops back up, you'll see on the, oh, sorry, it's reopened my open ops. I hadn't closed that down properly. That was my fault. But you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen is something that is headed My Springboard. Each user now has one springboard, and a springboard is a collection of one or more dashboards. And it kind of provides a home screen, really, which is why if you look in the very top left-hand corner of the springboard, there's a little home, so your home screen. The idea of a springboard is that it makes it easier for users to see the information that they need in order to do their jobs. It's not just there for the sake of it. You don't have to display the dashboards that I've got on here. You can have whichever ones are appropriate to each user. So this webinar, yes, it's fair to say, is probably focused on sales usage, which is the most common usage of workbooks. But if we were talking about somebody in a marketing role or somebody who looks after your support cases, you would obviously show dashboards that were relevant to them. Let me just maximize this springboard to make it a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm using the expand buttons in the top right. You can now see 3 tabs, and these are actually 3 dashboards. So the first one in this demo database, we've called Sales Executive My Day. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The next one is Sales Executive My Performance. And this is just a way salespeople in particular, we have found, do like to see how they're doing against target. They're not the only ones, but they are particularly driven by target. So it's often really useful to have a dashboard that allows them at any time to go and check how are they doing against target. I'm delighted to see that Anthony Khan is 170% of the way to his target. So maybe we need to review his targets. And then the third dashboard here for Anthony, I mentioned he's a sales manager. So he's tasked with getting some deals over the line himself, but he also runs a sales team. So we've provided him with a dashboard that gives an overview of the performance of all the different members of his team and the totality of that performance. And if I scroll down, you can see different charts and pipeline reporting just to give him a management oversight of what's going on. Let me go back to the one that's called My Day. What you're looking at here in the top part of this, actually, before I show you that, I'm going to just quickly, I'm not expecting you to absorb exactly what's on the screen, but as I scroll down, there are different reports on this dashboard that show you different things that are useful to somebody in this particular job role. They're just different reports or charts, and what you show on each dashboard is up to you as well. We can give you advice about some of the things that we find useful, but ultimately it's about what your users need to see. So back to this report at the top, My Open Opportunities. You may well be using a similar report, but probably you're using it in a grid format rather than in this card format. What we've introduced over the last year is the ability to show the reports on dashboards as a card, and there are different layouts of card that you can have depending what you want to see. This happens to be what we call one card wide, one card across the screen with a banner. You can see these colored banners. The first 3 are red, and then we get onto some that are green. This particular report is joining together opportunities with the associated follow-on activity that I mentioned earlier. Just to show you that this isn't sort of smoke and mirrors or anything like that, if I actually open up this particular dashboard, I'm just going to show you something very quickly. So I'm not particularly talking you through the how, but just to show you, this is me editing that particular dashboard. And when I go to the cog and go to report, I can click view as grid. So that's probably, for most of you, not all I'm sure, but for most of you, you're probably used to seeing these kind of reports just as lines. But what we often find, and in fact this is a good example, is that for me to see all the information I want to see, I have to keep scrolling over to the right and over to the right and over to the right. And even though we've got the ability to do things like freeze columns now, which you may not be aware of, even though we can do that, there's still a lot of scrolling. So I'm not going to save those changes, I'm just going to come out of that. So instead, we've introduced this concept of a card, which, as I say, pulls together information from the report and just displays it in an easier to interpret way. I hope you agree that it is a really visual way to see what's going on. And so what we've done is we've introduced color coding. You can see on this top, this first opportunity, one called Atlantic Auto, it says there's no activity scheduled to follow up on this. Remember, the best practice is if you've got an open opportunity, you should have a next step. So that one definitely needs some attention. The next one down, similar, it's got a red bar, but this time it just says, well, there is an activity. And in fact, if I look on the right-hand side, you'll see next activity due and in red 1 day ago. But it's highlighting it with a big red banner across the whole row to show, yep, it is overdue. Same thing with the third one down. And then I get into these opportunities are in much better shape because the close date's in the future, 16th of the 5th, that's in green. And the activity actually is due today, about 5 hours ago, but it's not actually overdue if I get to do that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close all of this down and try to show you what would happen if I came in at the start of a day and wanted to, whoops, daisy, wanted to have workbooks tell me what I'm supposed to do today. So again, I'm going to refresh my screen. If you have a Springboard set up, you won't need to refresh your screen like I'm doing here. This is just for the purposes of the demo. The Springboard will just automatically appear as soon as you log in, but it will only appear if one or more dashboards have been added to it. So for those of you online who are going, hang on, Jean said that we've got this functionality, but I don't see it when I log in, it's because no dashboards have been added to it yet. So it's the start of my day. I've come into the office and I'm trying to decide what to do. I look at my open opportunities and realize I'm a little bit behind with what I should be doing. So I'm going to pick the first one off the list, and I just click on Atlantic Autos to do that. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you to see it. Now, this is just an opportunity again, but it looks a bit different from the one that I opened at the start of the session. It's got the same sort of information on it. It's got a prospective customer, in this case, Atlantic Automotive. It's got the close date on it over here on the right, what stage we're at, and further down, it's got line items. So very much like the last one. But the key difference, which you will all have spotted without any doubt, is that it's got a panel on the right-hand side called Overview. That panel is divided into three main areas. The first, the top area, is next steps. What have you got planned? What follow-up is in place? And it's actually telling us, it's giving us a tap on the shoulder, if you like, saying nothing's planned on this one. The middle section, as I scroll down slightly, is for the people who are related to this deal. And we've got a couple here. We've got Ewan, who's got a grey bar across the top, telling us that he's our primary contact. And we've got Alan, he's the influencer, and his bar is green. I'll show you what's controlling that as we progress. And then the bottom third of the overview panel is a collection of sort of spliced together all the previous activities and emails that have been linked to this particular opportunity. So remember, when we looked at this earlier, I got all of this information, the same information. I could go to the People tab and I can see that both Alan and Ewan are linked to this opportunity, but I'm having to click to find that out. And plus it's not very colourful. Whereas if I go back to my main tab, I've still got the information on the right, exactly the same, but it's easier for me to see, and it tells a bit more of a story with the way that these things are being displayed. So if I wanted to create a next step, it's easy for me to do it. There's a couple of places. I can either click on the plus button next to next steps or click on this blue button saying add next step. Both do exactly the same thing. So I could add a phone call, for instance, to this. If you notice, it's automatically assumed that if I'm going to make a call to do with this opportunity, it assumes that I'm calling the primary contact, the person with whom I have most contact. Notice as well, you can, if you have photographs of the people that you deal with, you can add photographs or images of any sort. It doesn't have to be a photo, but you can upload images against people records and against organization records. So typically that would be something like a logo to tell you who the company is. Don't have to do it. Again, it's just adding color and making it a bit easier to use. So I don't know, call to follow up. Now, when am I going to do this? At some point in the future, hopefully, and I can click on the calendar and select a date from there. That's absolutely fine. We've been able to do that for as long as I can remember. But now we also have this little down arrow, which is this date picker relative to now. And it's just to help you kind of go, oh, I can't remember. They said call in 2 days. I can't be bothered to work out what that is. I'm sure you could be bothered, but you take the point that it's quicker. So maybe I can just select a week, and that's showing me a week from now. Okay. As always, you can still add information to the description about whatever you've said, whatever you've agreed, so that you've got that story about the conversation, the dialogue that you've had, in this case with Ewan. If I save and close that, it appears in my next steps because it's due in 7 days' time. And if I save and close the opportunity itself and just refresh my dashboard, it's still up there saying no activity scheduled, but if I just refresh it, it's gone. No, it hasn't gone. It actually appears further down the dashboard because these records are sorted by the due date of the follow-up activity. So it hasn't gone, but it's no longer troublesome because I've got a follow-up activity to do something with it. Okay. Let me just take the next one. this one says it's got an activity, but it's overdue. So I'll open that one up. Let's see what that is. Again, this is displaying the overview panel on the right-hand side. No previous activities here because nothing has been closed off. Maybe it should have been. Now, forgive me that this demo database isn't in the best of shapes, but it's got a couple of activities linked to it. One is overdue yesterday. There is something scheduled for 24 days' time, which is fine, but it was tapping me on the shoulder saying, no, something's overdue. So if I pick that one off, so here I am opening the activity. Imagine that I've given Evan, in this case we don't have a photograph for Evan, but if I've given Evan a call and he's said to me whatever he has said. Let's say he said, oh yeah, I do want to talk to you. I'm just a bit too busy at the moment. Could you call me in a week? Okay, yep, that's fine. So we now have these fields, outcome and next steps. Again, you might not, your system administrator might not have placed these onto an activity for you, but they are there and can be put onto form layouts if you wish. So I can pick the outcome. The options on this pick list are completely configurable, so you can have the kind of outcomes that make sense within your business. So I'm just going to select this first one, busy, call back later. Next steps, again, completely configurable. I'm going to say follow up. And notice what happens when I click on follow up. This field next due wasn't there before, but because I filled in the next steps field, next due has appeared. And again, we've got the same concept of I can just type in a date, I can pick a date from the calendar, or I can use the down arrow and pick whatever option I want to. I can also put more information in here. Obviously, you'd put something meaningful, but you get the idea. And when I save and close that, remember I've set it for the 15th. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong field. It was due the 15th yesterday. I've carried this out and I've said the next due activity is due on the 2nd of March. So when I save and close that now instead on the right hand side, instead of having one overdue activity and one due in 24 days, I've got the one that's due in 2 weeks that I just set up. I've got the one that was already there that was due in 24 days. And if I scroll down, there's the previous activity, the one that I've just marked as complete. But it was very easy to do that. I opened the current activity, annotated it, used the outcome, used the follow on, the next steps field, and just put in the date, and everything else just worked for me. So hopefully that makes sense. I will save and close that. And the same concept, remember it was this top one that I've modified. If I refresh that dashboard, that one's gone. So now I'm only left with one red row. So, of course, this isn't giving me sales skills as such. I've still got to be a good salesperson if I'm going to make a success of my opportunities. But I hope that what you can see is that what we're helping salespeople do in this scenario, or any user, this could be about cases that need attention. This could be about marketing campaigns that need some action. It could be all sorts of elements of somebody's job role. But the idea is that we're presenting them with that information in a much more usable, user-friendly way. While we're looking at the dashboard, I will just maximize it to make it slightly easier to see. It doesn't matter which dashboard we're talking about, but I just wanted to highlight to you that we have made some improvements generally to dashboards. You probably won't have noticed this deliberately. This is more like when maybe somebody that you're used to seeing most days wearing a pair of spectacles, they're not wearing them and you know it's the same person, but they look a little bit different. So we've enhanced dashboards a little bit. We've taken out, as I scroll down, this is a different report on here, we've taken out the hard lines. Things are just softer and crisper and easier to use. You'll have noticed a couple of times that when I went to refresh the dashboard, the refresh button only appears, it doesn't sit there, it only appears when you hover over it, as does an information button, so that you can put information when you're setting up your dashboard, you can put some information onto it to help your users understand what it is the dashboard is telling them. Obviously, you do need to hover over it. And the same with the maximize button. That will only appear when you hover over it, and when it's on an individual element of a dashboard, you can see it allows me to open that in a new window. Okay. A couple of other changes. You might have noticed at the very top of the dashboard, it says new with a down arrow. We've now made it possible to add a new button to a dashboard. You don't have to, but you can. And from there, you can add new records directly from that button. And the type of records that you can add, or create, I should say really, are any that you choose. We're not saying you can create new opportunities and tasks. That's your choice. And again, I will just show you, if I open up this dashboard to edit it, you can see about in the middle of the screen, it says create new records, and there's a down arrow here. So I could say, yeah, let's create new people from this dashboard, or let's create new sales leads. Obviously, you would do it with a bit of care. You wouldn't just randomly do it like I did, but that's how you do that if you would find that easier. The idea, again, it speaks to this concept of users not having to click in multiple places to do what they need to do. Whilst I've got this open actually as well, towards the bottom of the screen under the Springboard section, it says Springboard Groups. I said to you earlier that a Springboard will only appear for a user if at least one dashboard is on that Springboard. And what we've enabled, users can choose to put a dashboard onto their own Springboard if they want to. But if you create a dashboard, you can push it, if you will, onto a user Springboard by selecting which user group they're in. So if I wanted the finance users to see this dashboard on their Springboard, this is how I would achieve that. So that's quite easy to do. You can't see the effect of showing it with that group, but now on the new button, you can see I can now create new people or new sales leads from here, should I wish to. So just to remind you, we've been looking at very much sales-focused dashboards here, but I'm sure you've got other ones in your system. Depending when you signed up for Workbooks, we may have provided you with some dashboards out of the box. Things like the Sales Executive My Day, the Sales Executive Dashboard, the Sales Management Dashboard. But there are other ones as well that we can provide or that you can build yourselves or ask for our help in building. If I go to the email marketing one, for example, if you're interested in the marketing stats, this is the sort of thing that you might need to see. How many clicks have there been from particular mail shots that you've sent out? How many people are on your different campaigns and so on? Were your mail shots deliverable? Are they being successful? Are they hitting the mark? That kind of thing. You can tell I'm no marketeer, but you get the idea. Conversely, let's see, you might have something about, if you're working in a support role, you might have a dashboard that includes reports about your open cases, how many are on which queue, how far through them you are, that kind of thing. By the way, the overview panel that I showed you on an opportunity, it is available on an opportunity. It's also available on case records, because broadly speaking, the best practice that we talk about with opportunities, i.e. if it's an open opportunity, you should have a follow-up activity. That same general principle applies to support cases. If the case is open, the agent handling that case should have a next step to follow up with the customer, to ask for more information or talk them through a resolution or whatever it might be. So the overview tab is available on cases as well as opportunities. So whatever information you choose to display, I really would recommend that you invest some time in looking at which reports would be useful to you, putting them on the right dashboards, working out whether or not they would benefit from being displayed in a case layout, in a sort of form card layout, is what I should say, because I've got open cases here. This report, for instance, is in a card layout with a couple of columns. We're getting great feedback about those, actually, that it really does make it easier to use the system, and we use this approach here in-house as well. So have a look and make sure that you're pushing the right information out and sharing it with your users. Another new feature that I wanted to show you was the Windows Manager button. If you're anything like me, you'll find that you end up with quite a lot of records open on your desktop at any one time. There is a button that I like a lot, which is the little cross. That's not new, but close all windows is useful. But the new button is the 4 squares next to one another. You'll find it next to your start button. And I know that some of you will say, my start button's not up at the top left. That's fine. You could have it down at the bottom. But the point is the 4 little squares will be near the start button. And when I click on it, you can see what happens. You get to see an overview of all your open records towards the top of the screen, and anything that's been minimized and as it's currently in what we would call the system tray. And as you can see, you can close them all, you can minimize them, or you can click on one to bring that back into focus on your screen. So maybe if I clicked on this one down at the bottom, straight away it's going back to my, my dashboard. It's just worth exploring those things because it just makes it easier to navigate around the system. So there's a few bits and pieces that I've shown you, but before I move out of the tool, let me minimize this. In fact, I'll close everything down. That's going to make it a bit easier. There we go. Before I move away, I've talked a lot about the overview panel, and it's because I'm a little bit sad and I'm very excited about it because it makes using the tool so much easier. But we also have the general concept of a side panel. Now I've got a shortcut to an organization record here, Atlantic Computer Services, which I will just open up. I'll maximize it for you. We've got the concept. If you see, we've got information about the organization and about the primary contact at that organization. These bits of information are displayed in a card format. I honestly can't remember which release that came out in, but I think it was a little over a year ago that we released that particular piece of functionality, but you may not have actually invoked it yet. You may not want to. I hope you do. It kind of makes it easy to see what's going on with the record, but that's why it looks like that. But on the right-hand side, you can see there is a panel. This particular one is entitled Account Management, and what it's showing, just because we chose for it to show this, is a dashboard, a collection of reports that are related to this organization record. This organization, Atlantic Computer Services, in our made-up demo environment world, is part of a group of companies, with Atlantic Computer Services being the parent company, and there are a number of subsidiary organizations. And so the way the dashboard in that scenario has been set up, the first chart is showing us the billings for each of the constituent subsidiary companies. So we can see who's spending the most with us, and it looks very clear that it's Atlantic Telecom who is spending the most with us. And if I scroll down, we've decided to also show what kind of product categories are being billed or being sold to those organizations. That's just one idea for something you can put in a side panel. These panels, by the way, you can display them on the right-hand side of the screen or the left-hand side, depending on what makes sense to you. If I go to change the view, let me go to, let's say, the opportunity panel and load that. This is just to do, if you're wondering, although I'm not showing you the how, this is to do with the way that you construct or build your form layouts. You can choose to display panels. So right now, what I'm seeing on the right-hand side is a list of all the opportunities that are for Atlantic Computer Services. You can drag and drop the divider if you want to see more on the right-hand side and so on. I'll put that back for a second. So really, all this is doing is showing me information that would normally be in one of the tabs across the top. Across the top now, if I look at my little burger bar, you won't see the opportunity tab as a choice here because it's already being displayed in the panel on the right-hand side. If as a user, I decide, oh, I don't want to see opportunities on the right, I want to see transactions, let's say, I can change it so I'm seeing transactions alongside the main tab of my record. That said though, when I go and save the record itself, this will revert, the contents of the panel will revert to whatever was set up for me by the administrator. So I was looking at a view where opportunities were showing on the right-hand side. You can do this with anything. I'll just show you one more people panel, let's say. When that loads, we'll see all the people who are linked to Atlantic Computer Services, and actually they're showing in a kind of card view with their images. So hopefully you are getting the impression that there's quite a lot of flexibility here. and you can choose how you want these records to look. So that was all I was planning to show you in the tool itself. So I'd like to recap on what we've looked at. So if I go back to my PowerPoint, and we looked at the Overview tab. Remember, it is available only on opportunities and case records. It shows the next steps at the top of the view. It shows the people in the middle section, and at the bottom it shows a combination of all the previous completed activities and any emails that are linked to that record. Now, I showed you the Overview tab in a panel to the right of an opportunity, but in actual fact, the screenshot that's there now, I don't know how clear it is to you, but that's just showing as a tab on a record. So you can just show the Overview tab, hence the title of this particular slide. And to that point, you can use it with or without the panel. We're finding we're getting much better results, much better user feedback when it's shown on a panel, but you don't have to. We looked at the date picker. If you remember, I showed you a date field on an activity. We have, and that allows you to select a date relative to today, to now. So it just makes it much easier to select a date quickly without having to move forwards or backwards in the calendar. I think it's particularly useful when you're setting up follow-on activities, which is what I showed you within the product. Now, we have automatically added that pick list to the 3 date fields on tasks. So that's the due date, the completed date, and the next due date have already been provided with that drop-down. You can, however, if you want to, switch that off. Hopefully not. I hope you find it useful. But what you can do is customize the dates that, is it in, do you give a selection as is shown in the screenshot there of today, tomorrow, 2 weekdays, 3 weekdays, or do you want to just do 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month, 2 months? It depends on where the date field appears. So that's the only place where we've configured it on a task. But if you choose to, you can add it to any other date field, as long as you're a system administrator. So you go into the form layout and you use, probably a tiny bit too much detail for this particular webinar, but you use the values similar, they've just got to be formatted in the right way, as you can see in that sort of orange table there. So 0D means that you'll see the word today, minus 1D means that you'll see the word yesterday, and so on. But again, we can guide you with that if you need any extra help with it. I talked about card views. This being a new view, as it says here, that's available on landing pages and reports. You can view things as cards rather than just the grid where maybe you have to scroll along to the right-hand side. And there are quite a few options of the layout of that card. We looked at the single card, which is showing here in the screenshot, but you can have multi-cards, which are several cards wide across the screen. But of course, you won't get as much detail in them, just there's simply not as much space. What I didn't show you, but what is really nice when you're building those cards, is there is a drag and drop editor. So you get to just drag in whichever fields from your report you want to see on the card. You don't have to put all of the report fields onto the card, just the ones that are going to speak to people when they're using the system, really. We looked at dashboards. Now, I didn't show you this bit. I don't think I needed to. Hopefully it'll be self-explanatory. If you want to create a new dashboard, you can do that now from the Start menu. You didn't used to be able to do that. But if you click on Start and then click on New, you'll see the bottom option. It is just highlighted on that screenshot, is Dashboard. So it just makes it a little bit easier to create them. I also didn't show you this bit, but just as background information, there is now a description field on a dashboard if you want to populate it. If you do, if you look at the screenshot on the bottom right, any description that you put into the edit part of your dashboard will appear to the user under the description section on the left-hand side when they're using the dashboard itself. You can also categorize your dashboards if it makes it a little bit easier to manage. What I did show you briefly was that the dashboards themselves are crisper and cleaner and easier to use. We've tidied them up. And if you want to see things like the info button, you hover over it and then it will appear. So don't think it's just disappeared, because it is still there. We've also allowed you to add new records to dashboards if you choose to. When I say to dashboards, actually that's not quite accurate. From a dashboard, you can add a new record. Whether that record appears in the dashboard or not will depend on what reports are on your dashboard, but you can do that. And then Springboards. Again, hopefully it's come across to you that we're quite excited about this, because we're getting great feedback. We use them ourselves. As it says here, it is a home screen or a default area that loads as soon as you log into Workbooks. Just one springboard to help people drive their day and set them off in the right direction. It looks more or less like a dashboard, but you can have multiple tabs, with each tab being a unique dashboard. The user can push, I've put here, they can say, I want that dashboard on my springboard, and a user can dictate that. Alternatively, whoever builds the dashboard can, using that group membership field that I showed you, can say, I want this dashboard to appear on the springboard of those users in this group. That's not limited just to people who are system administrators, but my gut feel is that in most instances, it would be a system administrator building that dashboard and then sharing it with the relevant groups. And as it says here, your springboard does load at login, but only once there is something on it, okay? And then we looked at the panel, similar to the overview tab or panel, but with much more flexibility, because you can choose as a system administrator, when you're setting up a form layout, you can choose, do I want to show anything in a panel either on the left or the right of my main tab? And you can choose, if so, what that tab is. We saw that there was one that I showed you, as is on the front screenshot here, it was a dashboard pertinent to the particular record that we were on, but you can just choose to show any of your regular tabs that you'd normally have to click into just to the left or right of the main tab. And I showed you our funky little new 4 buttons that allow you to manage the windows that you've got open. It just makes it easier to sort out what's on your screen and focus on what it is that you're trying to find. So I haven't shown you every single new piece of functionality. For example, quite a large piece of functionality that we've introduced and I haven't covered today for deliberate reasons, because I think it needs a session on its own, is the ability to set up what we call target sets, and to be able to reuse targets in reports. They can be financial targets, they can be numeric targets, whatever you like. That's for a different day, I think. Other examples of things that I haven't shown you, but we've simplified the appearance of various record types. So you might have noticed that emails look much cleaner and they've got improved button icons. We've reduced in lots of places the amount of on-screen text that you see, just to make things easier to navigate around. And for those of you who are using our editable grids, if you're using multi-select pick lists, if you haven't noticed already, that is now, we support the use of multi-select pick lists in editable grids. So they're just a few of the things that I didn't show you today, but hopefully I've given you a flavour of what you can do. So, information on everything that you have seen today, as well as the other enhancements that I haven't gone through with you, is always available on our knowledge base. So if you haven't made use of it, please do. We also put information in there about our roadmap for what we're planning on bringing out in the future, and also information on new releases that we have brought out. If you're an authorised support contact and need any help, then please contact our support team, support@workbooks.com, and there's the telephone number there. And I'm bound to say this because I run the account management team, but if you've got any queries and need any help, please do keep in regular contact with your account manager. So that's enough of me doing all the talking. Do we have any questions that I might be able to help with? Let me just have a little look. I'm seeing one, can we get a copy of this webinar? So yes, Ruth will make sure all the session's been recorded, and in the next day or two, don't hold us quite to that, but over the next couple of days, you will receive an email with a link to a recording of the session. So absolutely, you will get that. Anything else? If you have any questions, do feel free to put them. You're welcome, Nicola. Do feel free to put them in the question area. All quiet. I hope that's a good sign, hopefully. Okay. If you do think of anything after the session, we've talked about ways that you can communicate with us, and please do. We are really interested in your feedback. We're interested in your ideas, actually, of how we can communicate with you and help keep you up to date with what we're doing in the product, so that you can leverage all the changes that we're making and really benefit from them. So if you've got any great ideas for that, please do send them through. I'd be happy to hear them. So all that remains for me to say is thank you. Thank you for your time today. I do hope you find the webinars useful. As I say, let us know if you've got ideas for how we can enhance the content or the format of them. And look out for that link that Ruth will be sending out. I mentioned the new release. As I say, I don't have a date for it yet, but we will let you know when it's coming up. And as usual, we will run a post-release webinar to talk you through the changes that you might like to leverage in that. Thank you, Mary. Nice feedback. Thank you very much. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next session. Thanks. Bye-bye.